What made me super excited to work with you was the concept of how you spoke about the board and how you were losing control and then gained control back to the board. And at that time, my entrepreneurial journey, I was just forming the board. I think the most interesting part of your entrepreneurial journey was building this company to $100 million of revenue. The company was worth close to $1 billion, and then the whole thing depreciated in value. And hear of what happened there, and more particularly, like, what do you think I can get as a key takeaway and our audience can get out of this as a learning lesson?
I feel like I got to live 3 entrepreneurial lives. One is kind of the bootstrap, struggling, trying to get the business going, and then the second life was just a rocket ship, building it to over 100 million in recurring revenue. And the third was the challenges of dealing with slowing growth, dealing with board challenges, team challenges, your own challenges. You're going through it, frankly, trying to manage all of that. We can do anything, and that was about 2.5 years into the journey, and it was about 6 months more before we started to have consistent pay that I could bring home. Like, it was actually the business was actually working. What if we hadn't done that?
Welcome everybody to the $1 Billion Journey podcast. My name is Alex Duta, and I'm building a $1 billion empire in the unsexy space of restoration. This podcast is all about pulling back the curtain on this journey and allowing viewers to learn while I learn. Today, I'm super excited to invite Mr. Clate Mask to beautiful Scottsdale, Arizona. Clate and I, we met through a mastermind originally, and I think the most intriguing part of what made me super excited to work with you was the concept of how you spoke about the board and how you were losing control and then gained control back to the board. And at that time, my entrepreneurial journey, I was just forming the board. Yeah. So I don't know if you remember, but I reached out to you, and my philosophy is, like, when you find somebody awesome, just ask, hey, well, how much is an hour of your time worth? And then that slowly kind of turned into us working together for the past couple of years. So welcome in. Thanks so much for
great to be here, Alex.
Yeah. Well, Clate, I'm super curious about something, right? I think the most interesting part of your entrepreneurial journey was building this company to $100 million of revenue. The company was worth close to $1 billion, and then the whole thing depreciated in value and kind of blew up a little bit. And I don't know if you feel comfortable sharing it, but I'd really like to hear of what happened there, and more particularly, like, what do you think I can get as a key takeaway and our audience can get out of this as a learning lesson? Yeah,
so I'm happy to talk about it. It was an amazing experience over a long period of time. I feel like I got to live 3 entrepreneurial lives. One is kind of the bootstrap, struggling, trying to get the business going, and then the second life was just a rocket ship, building it to over 100 million in recurring revenue. And the third was the challenges of dealing with slowing growth, dealing with board challenges, team challenges, your own challenges. You're going through it, frankly, trying to manage all of that, and then ultimately getting valued as an EBITDA company instead of a growth company. That's that's really as simple as it gets when you look at valuation, going from close to $1 billion to being a fraction of that.
Got it. And you had an IPO dream. Like, we were in similar situations as now. Wanted to build $1 billion empire in a relatively unsexy space of marketing, automation, SaaS, right? On a micro SMB level, which wasn't really heard of at that point, right?
Yeah, we were doing, Infusionsoft was the leader in marketing automation for small business. We really pioneered that category for small business. It didn't exist before we started doing it. And we had a view of going public and got very close, actually went through the whole process of hiring bankers and had a date, scheduled to start the organization meeting, get the whole process going. And yet we decided, hey, we wanted to shore up the low end of the market and get a solution for the solopreneurs, because that's about 80 or 90% of the small business market. So we didn't really have that before we were getting ready to go public. We thought, let's do that before we go public. And it turned out to be one of the most challenging things I could imagine as an entrepreneur, to try to take software down market like that. And that's really the strategic mistake that we made that caused a lot of challenges for us and slowed the growth.
Got it. What's the challenge? Like, why does going down market, even though there's 80% of the market, there's a lot of quantity out there of these smaller paying, not so great customers. Why was that a challenge?
Yeah. there's a lot of reasons for it. Number one, the smaller the business, the higher the churn. It's just a fact of life. The smaller businesses are in survival mode. They're struggling. They're just not as likely to be around a year, 2 years, 5 years from now to pay you that monthly subscription. I consider this the number one law of SaaS is smaller the business, higher the churn. And when you have $100 million business, you can't afford to have that much churn. You've got that's just way too many new customers you're having to bring on to backfill the churn that's going out the door. So that's one reason why it was really challenging. The second reason why it's really challenging is if you think about a horizontal marketing automation solution, which is what we were, the sophistication of that solution is something that a brand new business often is just not ready for. They're not reaching for that. Stated another way, they didn't have the problem that we solved. They got the problem of, I just need to get some leads and try to get some customers in the door, not, oh, I'm dropping the ball with my customers and I've got leads slipping through the cracks and I've got all this inefficiency that's just dropping to the floor. And so when you think about marketing automation, it's a little more of a middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel solution, not top of the funnel. So that's the second reason, is they didn't have the problem that we solved. And then the third reason is it takes a lot of capital to go get that kind of a solution in place for a very, very broad market like that. And at the time we were going after it, we were at a point where investors weren't wanting to put a lot more capital in. We'd kind of scaled it and built it. And so, in hindsight, you might say, well, maybe we should have gone public and then done it. But the truth is that would have been a mess, being in the public markets with trying to get a solopreneur solution out to the market. So those are some of the reasons why it was really challenging. You live and learn.
So if I'm recapping this in like layman's terms for like an entrepreneur that maybe is starting out the business, the whole thing went south when we tried to be everything for everybody. And the one thing that could have prevented this maybe was for us to hyper-focus and be an amazing solution for a smaller segment of the market.
Yeah, that's a fair way to say it. It's really deceptive and tricky when you're in small business because you don't realize how massive the market is at that solopreneur level. And so, our challenge is we're out there saying, hey, we're marketing automation for small business. And what happens? Well, 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 of the people that come knocking on the door don't actually need our solution. So then what happens? Your salespeople are saying, oh, let's lower the price. Let's have a better, a solopreneur edition. Your partners are saying, hey, we could sell so much more if we had a lower edition. Your board members are saying, look, we got so many, so much market opportunity. Your founders are saying, hey, our vision is to serve millions of small businesses. We can only do that if we serve. So you have all these dynamics that are saying, go serve that customer. And the reality is it's a very different customer. And like I said, there's a bunch of factors working against you in terms of churn that make it really difficult. Another way to say it is, and what you've seen happen in the industry over the last 5 to 10 years is you've seen a total trend toward verticalization. Well, why is that? Because if you're a restoration business, you don't want to get a general marketing automation solution. You want a solution that speaks your language, has content, templates, all of the configuration pre-done for you. And that's the reality of small business marketing automation, as it's moved to a verticalized approach.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I see the evolution of software very interesting. Like first, it's like giant computers within these rooms, right? And then it's like, oh, we could take this to the cloud. So then you have cloud-based. And then you have these horizontal solutions, the era of horizontal cloud-based computing. And then you went into verticalization, but point solution verticalization. Right. So all these like photo app here, TurboTax app here, whatever, like super hyper-focused on one thing. And it didn't really do the whole workflow. It just did one thing really well. And now I feel like we're in the era where we need all-in-one vertical software built by the people that understand these niches very well. And that's
exactly what's happening, because a lot of these vertical solutions, they start solving one small problem, and then they start adding on more, and they become robust solutions. And some of them are starting to become really impressive all-in-one solutions that do all the workflow automation, all of the things that you really need in order to take advantage of the technology today. With AI and all the things that you can do. When it's vertical specific, it's just a lot more accessible for small businesses.
Awesome. So walk me through, or actually walk our audience through the founding story of Infusionsoft, now known as Keap. Like, how did you get into this? What were those early days like?
Oh man.
Are you a serial entrepreneur with like 20 other businesses under your belt, or was Keap your first thing?
It was the first big thing we went for. I'd done a bunch of little businesses. I love entrepreneurship. I love business. But it was really the first thing where we decided, we wanted to build a big company, raise capital, potentially go public, just have that kind of a vision. And it didn't start that way. We started, truthfully, I had a bunch of student debt after going through lots of years of college. And I was like, how am I going to pay this debt off? Well, I'd gotten into software and I'd realized how, first of all, you could create value very fast. It was super fun. And I was like, well, let's do a software company, build it and sell it and pay off student debt. That was the thinking. And we got going and I was like, crap, this is way harder than I thought it was going to be. It was just really hard. I mean, you run into the realities of entrepreneurship and there's so many things to do. There aren't enough hours in the day. As I say in the book, Conquer the Chaos, the chaos comes because there aren't enough hours in the day. There just aren't. And you don't have, small businesses usually don't have the systems that they need in order to, take some of the weight off of the business owner. So we started off as a custom software company, creating software for small businesses, and then pretty quickly moved into CRM software for small businesses. And then decided after a couple of years of, first 2 years were brutally difficult, 3 years really, and then we started to have a little bit of success. But, once we got through those hard years, we started to raise our sights, just like entrepreneurs do. You get to one peak in the mountain, you're like, oh, well, I didn't realize there was that peak. And so that's really how it unfolded for us. But if you want to know the ugly truth of the early days, I'll share that with you. So.
Sure.
All right. So we were, I had this vision of building it up quickly and selling it. And when we got into it, realized how hard it was and how much longer it was going to take to get the business going. My wife was starting to go like, why are we doing this? We're not making any money. We went to all these years of college. We got all this student debt. We've got, at the time we had 4 kids. She's like, you got to start making money, dude. And I'm like, I'm trying. Like, we're trying to get this business going. And the reality was about 2 years in, we had our product. We were getting traction. It was recurring revenue. And I was like, hey, this is starting, things are getting better. And she'd be like, well, it's not getting better for us. Like, it's not flowing home yet. We're still paying off all these things that, business debt. And so one day she's like, look, I can't do this anymore. Like, you have to go get a real job. Wow. And I was like, hon, we're almost there. Like, it's getting better. And she's like, it's not getting better for me. This is a really hard conversation. And it wasn't the first one we'd had. In the past, I'd always been able to say, like, just hang in there. It's getting better. And this time she's like, no, you have to promise me that you're going to go look for a job. Because I had said before, okay, I'll kind of look, and then you're wrapped up in your business. You're not looking for a job. So she's like, I said, okay, I will. She's like, promise me that tomorrow when you go to the office, you will start looking for a job. And I was like, I like everything in me was not wanting to do it because I knew we were getting close. And she's like, yeah, but you're delusional. You don't realize how hard this actually is. And I was like, yeah, that's probably true. So I go into the office the next day with every intention to look for a job, and all the fires hit, all the things are going on, and I get to the end of the day and I haven't done any job hunting whatsoever. And she's like, I knew that this was going to be a very tense conversation. So I'm driving home, I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, what am I going to say? And I was like, I just got to be honest. And I felt really bad because because the business had kind of swallowed me whole that day. Hadn't done what I said I was going to do. Walked in the door, found her. She turned around and she's like, did you look for a job today? The very first thing. Wow. And I said, no. And I braced myself. She gave me a big hug and held on to me. And I was like, well, what's going on? And she held on really tight. And then she was shaking and I realized she was crying. And I didn't know what was going on because the conversation the night before, we were crying and it was a bad cry. Wow. So we're standing there in the kitchen. She's crying and holding on to me. And finally, she kind of lets go. And I'm like, what's going on? She's like, everything's going to be okay. God knows what's going on. Just keep going. If you're an entrepreneur and you've felt the tension in your marriage that the business is pulling you apart and it's happening for a long time and you're worried and you're fearful for your marriage and you go through these conversations like what I'd been going through. It wasn't the first one we'd had the night before. When she said that, when she was like, everything's going to be okay, just keep going, I was like, we can do anything. Like, okay, let's go. I was so excited and so fired up, and I just hugged her and thanked her for her faith and just sticking with me. And that was about 2.5 years into the journey, and it was about 6 months more before we started to have consistent pay that I could bring home. Like it was actually the business was actually working. So that, but she has said to me probably no less than 100 times since, what if we hadn't done that? Because what we experienced was incredible. And by the way, some people would say, oh, well, yeah, Act 1 was really tough, and then Act 2 was really great, and Act 3 was tough. It was all amazing. It was all incredible. I had a guy ask me a couple of weeks ago, so, we weren't able to get that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It didn't turn into the $1 billion, outcome that you thought it was going to be. Do you wish you wouldn't have done it? And I was like, are you kidding me? Like I got to have the entrepreneurial experience of a lifetime. It was amazing what we did.
Full roller coaster.
The whole thing. I mean, it was incredible. So anyway, that's the early stage story. I'm happy to tell a little more about that, or I could talk about the other parts of it.
So one thing that strikes me very interesting, and the last podcast we just shot today was with Stephanie Karlovitz, who literally had a similar, she had the opposite actually. She sold the business, got rid of everything, ran into the woods, listened to God, so on and so forth. But I keep reading books, and there's this correlation between entrepreneurship and belief, right? And obviously there's the religious way to put it, but if we zoom out and make it even more agnostic, like 80% of the people that Tim Ferriss, right? Yeah. Tim Ferriss interviewed in his book, Tools of the Titan. Yeah. So 80% of the people that Tim Ferriss interviewed in the book said that they had some sort of correlation to mindfulness, spirituality, faith, and such. And then I'm reading Mark Benioff's book, and he oftentimes goes back to that. Steve Jobs goes back to that.
Yep.
What's this correlation here that maybe most entrepreneurs don't understand between faith, belief, a higher power, and entrepreneurship, value creation, problem solving, humanity?
This is a whole episode, and I got a lot of thoughts on it. As you know from my book, I talk a little bit about this. Let me just summarize a couple points, and then I'll go into them.
Sure.
Point number one, you have to have an undying, irrational belief in the success of your company. It is irrational. Sharice was right. I was delusional. There's no rational reason to believe that this thing's going to be successful when you're looking at it in the early stages. So
95% of them are going to fail.
Yeah.
98% of businesses fail. So
and the ones that don't fail, you look at the data and you look at the experiences and you look at the stories of what's going on, and you're like, there's no chance. Right? So that's the first point, is you've got to have an undying, irrational belief that it will be successful. Where does that come from? We'll come back around to that. Number two, you really are, in entrepreneurship, you are a steward of something much greater. And this is what a lot of entrepreneurs sometimes miss. They think, well, I'm just going to go build this thing. And it's like, no. There are very few people on the planet. There's a very small percentage of people on this planet who have the ability to go create a business that can bless the lives of people. So when you tap into that, thing and you realize, oh, I'm a steward, not just, a capitalist that's going to create something for myself. And you can call it conscious capitalism. There's lots of different ways to talk about this, but to me, it's the principle of stewardship. You have been given something, a gift, a capability, a power, a creative capacity that most people don't have. Now, I can't, you see entrepreneurs that do amazing things. They can't go do what Van Gogh does. They can't go, their creation is not a piece of art that you put on canvas or a sculpture or something like that. But it is a creation, and it is a very, I believe, sacred power to be able to create that. So there's this connection to a power when you see it as a steward. So that's the second point, is you got this stewardship thing. And then the third thing is the skill set that is required to do this is a skill set that is just very, by the way, it's sometimes not the most socially appreciated or acceptable skill set.
But tell me about it.
You have
to be weird. You have to be willing to go misunderstood for long periods of
time. That's right. So the skill set that you have is one that is able to tolerate and deal with. In some ways, it's kind of like that denial mode, but it's a little different than that, where you just have such an ambition and drive and passion to go do this thing. And sometimes that's born out of, childhood issues that we have. Sometimes it's born out of family things. Sometimes it's born out of, our there's all sorts of stuff that drive this. But that skill set is one that will just has the ability to almost will it to be. And that, by the way, that's part of why this skill set is sort of socially unappreciated, because it's a bit domineering. It's a bit bull in the china shop. It's a bit inconsiderate of others at times. You know, it's all these things that are not real polite and socially acceptable.
And they don't fit the box. They don't stand in line. They don't. Yeah,
that's right. And yet it is what creates. So if you take those principles and you go, okay, well, you got to be irrational and crazy. You got to have this stewardship mentality, and then you have to have a skill set that pushes through all the obstacles for all the reasons and just goes at it. You know, that's where does that come from? Where do you get that? And so many people find it from a higher power to kind of connect those dots and recognize what they were created to do and what they were given as a steward, or what they were endowed with to do this thing, right? And then that they accept their rough edges sometimes, and they're like, yeah, I'm just going to go charge through these things because I actually do have the greater good, this greater thing that I'm looking to accomplish. And I think that's actually one of the greatest challenges of entrepreneurship, is how do you not lose yourself in that process of creating something amazing? How do you not cause it to become a selfish thing? How do you not get so absorbed in it? You know, that's.
And how do you do that? How do you create the space, and like, how do you get off the, like, a lot of entrepreneurs will get sucked into it, like you said, and will be on this roller coaster. In my book, I talk about the reactive roller coaster where you're going up and down, you're consumed by the business. How do you create that space?
Yeah.
That
so
beginner's mind that.
I think it's the question for conscientious entrepreneurs that are out to do something, really significant. And I write about this in the book. The background of the book is I wrote the first edition as a New York Times bestseller 15 years ago, and then we lived 15 years of serving small businesses, and I got to see it even more closely. And so last year when I did the second edition of the book, I put a lot more of the answer to this question in the book, because I'd been able to, when I wrote the first edition, I didn't have 2 decades of experience and working with hundreds of thousands of small businesses to see it. So it's in the book, but I'll summarize it this way. The easiest way I can summarize it is, there is in that quest of balance to create some amazing thing with your business and to create an amazing life. There are what I call in the book the 3 transformative habits. And I have studied this for years and years and years. Since I was a little kid, I noticed entrepreneurs, business owners who are successful. And so I kind of went like, what is it? And I started to kind of see it and observe it. But after several decades, I've distilled it down to 3 things. And I call them the 3 transformative habits. And if you go look into religious, any religion, any thought leadership, you're going to find these common denominators. And so people don't like hearing this, because this is the unsexy hard work of what you need to do. But the 3 transformative habits are, what I call morning mastery, number 2, what I call weekly winning, and number 3 is quarterly conquest. And in essence, it's waking up early and having a way of creating self-mastery. And number 1. Number 2, it's a weekly evaluation process that both learns from the last week and designs and creates intentionally the next week. And third, the quarterly conquest is about learning from your last quarter and then looking at the big picture of your life and what you're trying to accomplish, and then creating this next 90 days of what you're going to accomplish based on everything that's happened in the past 90 days and the visions you have for your life. Morning mastery, weekly winning, quarterly conquest. Those are, in essence, if you go find any of the questions or any of the answers to the question you asked, essentially you've got to do that. You got to create the space in those ways to not lose yourself in the process.
What does the morning mastery look like? I mean, I know because we've worked on it.
Yeah.
But, what does the morning mastery look like for our audience that maybe doesn't know about it?
Yeah. So first of all, you'll notice I didn't call it a routine. The word rut is in the word routine, and there's a very fine line between a routine that turns into a rut. And so the morning mastery will change up a little bit so you don't fall into ruts, and so it doesn't just become mechanical.
Yeah.
Sometimes call it morning magic because it really should feel magical. It's so exciting to wake up and do this work every morning. In essence, the morning mastery is you're making sure that you are caring for your mind, body, and spirit. And so your mind, you got to, one of the best ways to do this is through journaling and getting your mind clear, meditation, just, the mindfulness practices. So the morning should consist of some aspect of taking care of your mind. Journaling is my favorite one because it's the easiest. Even when you don't feel like doing it, you start and then it just begins. Takes care of itself. Taking care of your spirit. So this can be prayer, this can be meditation, this can be getting out into nature and connecting that way. It can be scripture, it can be whatever it is that helps connect your spirit to our body. We all have body and spirit. That's what we're made up of. And if we're not careful, body just runs the show. So how do you make sure that the spirit is in control? This is the essence of self-mastery, right? So doing something around that. And then the third part's the easy and obvious one that everybody knows because the body does run us. And we realize that if we don't exercise the body, then we pay for it, right? So I try to teach people, look, you're going to do some collection of activities, but in, at the end of that morning mastery, you want to make sure that you've taken care of your mind, body, and spirit. And people will say, oh, I don't have an hour to do this. Because I generally say, look, the standard is 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes. I'm at a stage in my life where I get to do it for about 2 hours on a normal morning. And it's amazing. I love it. I just live for that time. But I also have a 10-minute version that's three minutes each. And I have, a travel version. And I have all these ways so that I don't make an excuse to say, oh, I'm not doing it today because of this. No, I just do a different version of it.
Yeah, I mean, I like the fact that you talked about routine because, you exposed me to it, but I also, a bunch of others, like Dan Martell's a mentor of mine. He talks about it and such. And like the concept of like anchoring and just adding your twist to it. It's like, for me, it's like my prayer and such happens in the shower just because you're in the shower anyway. And I like, instead of listening to music, just wash your hair and then go into it kind of thing. And it's absolutely incredible how you can like craft it and tailor it. And it's my favorite part of the day.
I totally agree. The concept of habit stacking that James Clear talks about in Atomic Habits is such a powerful thing. Like once you're doing one thing well, then just put another thing right on top of that. It's just so easy. It becomes very natural.
What do you think is the biggest lesson that I need to learn on this journey of building, my ambitions, what I'm doing, what I've learned so far and such? Yeah. What's the biggest lesson or the biggest thing that I need to overcome on this journey to a $1 billion empire?
You're an amazing entrepreneur. You've got the ability to create. You got the ability to build. Like a lot of very ambitious, driven entrepreneurs, the biggest thing is to not allow that ambition and ego to swallow you, to take over. And so it becomes about doing what we just talked about. It is doing those morning mastery, weekly winning, quarterly conquest, and staying grounded and balanced. In the book, I talk about the 5 areas of life. And so you've got to, if you're not careful, entrepreneurs will just go after the business area or the financial area. It's like, well, hold on. There's a physical, spiritual, and social part of it as well. 100%. And you've got to feed those. So, how do you stay balanced and not lose yourself in the process? It's what we just talked about. And for you and your ambition, and for most people that are really ambitious, driven, capable entrepreneurs, they become their own worst enemy. And we've all dealt with that at different times. Everybody has. And so, my advice to you is make sure that when you're, and it's really tricky because the ego is the sneakiest little thing in the world. And your ego blinds you from seeing it. And so you have to listen to the people that are around you who love you, and your ego will fight against it and start vilifying the people who are saying all these things. And so you got to realize, oh, if my wife is telling me this and I'm starting to get angry with her because she's telling me this, she's probably right. And it's probably my ego that's not wanting me to see it and change something. And so you just need to be really aware of the cues from your loved ones and the people who care about you, and understand that they might be seeing something that your entrepreneurial ambition has put a blind spot on. In the book, I call these the ego traps. And you got to make sure that you're not falling into those traps. And you're setting up, because the ego is so tricky, you almost have to set up a system that helps you to see these things. And by the way, this is also one of the reasons why so many entrepreneurs go to religion, because that has some built-in mechanisms generally to help you not fall victim to your ego.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that. I really do. Now, the next question, the last question for the entrepreneur or the person that's listening right now, that's either an entrepreneur just starting out, or maybe that person that realizes they have those entrepreneurial traits. And now they're listening to this podcast and they're like, wait a minute, a lot of people around me don't have these things, but I've got them.
Yeah.
What's your word of advice for them?
Yeah. Humbly embrace them. Humbly embrace what you have. It's a gift to have those things. And it's not, it's not something to be ashamed of, nor is it something to be boastful about. It's just, those are gifts you have. So go do something amazing with them. Create something that, benefits everybody that's involved, employees, customers, partners, investors, everybody, the community that you're in. That's the point of conscious capitalism. So I would say go be a conscious capitalist, go create something amazing, find your expression on the canvas of business and go build it. Go build something really awesome and recognize you're capable of doing something that a fraction of a % of the population is capable of doing. So go do it and have a ton of fun doing it with people.
Awesome. Now, I have this theory that not everybody who has these traits should necessarily go out and be an entrepreneur. Meaning, quote unquote, take the risk to go found their own thing, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, right? Probably one of the reasons a lot of businesses fail is because everybody kind of chases that sexy part of things. What do you think of the intrapreneur movement? Like, I think there's a lot of millionaires, for example, that are created, and a lot of people that are blessed in Silicon Valley because they're employee number 5 at like a tech startup,
right.
Or, even in the trades, like if you're entrepreneurial, but you've already found somebody who's grown a company to $5 to $10 million, like somehow partnering together with that person, right. Or, being kind of like an intrapreneur, taking leadership over those outcomes, just like if you were the entrepreneur, but not necessarily being that person taking all the first mover risk, if that makes sense.
Yeah. That's what's required to build great companies is you got to have people that, it's not just about the founder or the founding team or it's people that come along at different stops on the journey. As I talk about the stages of growth, and you need different people at different stages. And some people really love the stage. I talk about the stages change on the 1s and 3s of revenue. So that 0 to 100,000 stage 1, 100,000 to 300,000, 300,000 to 1 million. Well, some people are really good at the 300,000 to 1 million and 1 million to 3 million. So they're just in their groove in the 300,000 to 3 million, those two stages, because they get to wear a lot of different hats. They get to do a lot of different things. There's not a ton of structure and process and has to be done exactly this way. And others are like, are you kidding me? I hate that. Like my whole thing is to put the structure and the system and the process in place. And those people are going to be really great as the business gets bigger. So you got to find what you really like and add what's needed at that stage of the business. But what I would say is great entrepreneurs usually are pretty clear on which stage the stage or two that they like to play in and find expression in that stage. And it really just comes down to, the super raw, I think, there's the pioneers and the settlers concept, right? And the earlier people are the pioneers and they're not going to do the settling, and the settlers are not going to do the pioneering.
Interesting. What's your rule? I mean, in the book you talk about the rule of 3s and 1s. What does that pertain to, and how does that pertain to entrepreneurs in general?
Yeah, so it really is about the stage changes of business. And what happens is most people intuitively understand that businesses don't just grow smooth up and to the right. They grow in kind of this stair-step fashion. And it's because you kind of plateau if you don't make certain changes to your people, process, and products. So if you don't make these changes, you plateau, and the plateaus tend to be at the 1s and 3s of revenue. So you'll see people getting stuck at 100,000, and they kind of never break out of this job of one person, maybe a person that's helping a little bit, and they're kind of stuck there. Well, it's because there's different things you need to do with your people, process, and products to get to 300,000. And then you'll see people kind of get stuck there. And then at 1 million, it's the most common place that successful entrepreneurs get stuck is at 1 million. By the way, only 3% of businesses that ever get started make it to 1 million. Only 3%. Wow. And and then a lot of them get stuck there. And it's because, it's the age-old saying, what got you, out of Egypt won't get you to the promised land. It's, what got you here won't get you there. And you've got to make these adjustments to the people, process, and products, or you get stuck at those stages. And so that's what it is. It's the 1s and 3s of revenue. I wrote about this 15, 16 years ago. I've studied it like crazy for 20 years. It just is. It's like a law of business. I don't know why, but it's what happens. And if entrepreneurs are attuned to it, then they'll start to go, oh yeah, I need to make some adjustments. Yeah, I've had this problem with my, customer success person for a long time. And it's because, they're not going to make it to the next stage.
And then there's also the theory that you could, have a person move up max one stage, and then a person should never move down more than 2 stages.
What I say is that a good leader will help you grow 1 stage. Think of that. That's a 3x increase in growth. So if you're doing 500,000, a good leader is going to help you grow to 1.5 million. A great leader will help you grow 2 stages. So that's 10x roughly. But it's a rare exceptional leader. So, you find a great sales leader, they're probably not going to help you do more than a 2-stage change. And sometimes founders and entrepreneurs are trying to get that person to grow, and that person that's not what they're comfortable doing. They don't want to stretch. It's usually only the founder or founders that are willing to do all of the crazy stretching, growing, learning, developing, burning the midnight oil, cutting off aspects of their ego. I mean, all these things that most people just aren't going to make those adjustments. And so they're comfortable in a certain stage. And so what I say is recognize that a good leader will take you 1 stage. A great leader will take you 2 stages. It's very, very rare that they can take you more than 2 stages. And then the other thing, and this is what really is important about the stages, is don't hire for more than 1 stage ahead of where you are. If you're at $1 million and you want to get to the next stage at 3 million, don't go hire a person who has experience in the companies that are 10 million, 15, 20 million. You might fall in love with their resume and think, oh, wow, look at this company they were with. But it's totally different than the stage that you're getting ready to go into. So you got to hire for the stage that you're heading into, and don't hire more than 1 stage ahead. Don't fall for the shiny object. It's not going to work out well.
Makes sense. Awesome. Well, Clate, thank you so much for sharing all this information.
Yeah, you bet. Happy to do it, Alex.
Working together with you, and I love learning from you.
Yeah, thank you.
Where could our audience find you if they wanted to find out more about you or read your book? You mentioned the book.
Yeah, conquerthechaosbook.com. Book, bunch of free resources, bunch of downloads and different things there. But that's awesome. That's probably the best place if you're an entrepreneur that's wanting to figure out how do you actually have a great business and a great life and not sacrifice one for the other. That's what that book's all about.
Awesome. Thanks so much, man. This is awesome.
Thanks, Alex. Appreciate it.